Good evening, friends. The operational situation at the front by the end of the 6th of March. Let's talk today in more detail about the Bakhmut, Avdeevka, and Zaporizhia sectors of the front, as well as about the news background. We'll start with Ivanovsky. Heavy fighting continues in the Bakhmut direction. The number of assault actions by Russian troops, as well as counterattacks by the armed forces of Ukraine, is quite large. We observed during the day. At the same time, there are reports of air bomb attacks on the city of Chazan Yar in the vicinity. That is, tactical aviation is involved. With the support of tactical aviation, Russian troops are conducting offensive operations, and at the same time conducting diversionary strikes on a number of sites in the Bakhmut direction, but on the situation in Ivanovo. We'll start with him. There are very heavy battles with varying success. Actually, we have been stating these for the last 48 hours, although the fighters had reports from our side, as you remember, that there was an advance in the north. We noted it then, and it was in the south. In the south, the situation has been relatively stabilized, but this is for some time, let's say so, because it was in one attack, in the second yes, but during the day, a dozen of them are carried out in the Ivanovo and the surrounding area. Therefore, a very difficult situation persists with varying success. Everyone is also putting pressure on about this area by Russian troops. We do not fix any significant changes in this section of the front and are moving to the Avdeevka direction. This will be a short summary of the main points we will go through. We will start with the settlement of Burdik. Added some clarifications on this section of the front. So, today, footage was published from the enemy side with Russian military officers. Again, Abrams was hit. But the situation there is such that Abrams attacked along the forest belt itself, completely passing it to the very settlement of Burdik, and actually where he was hit. In any case, part of the forest belt where Russian troops were previously present, and you and I said a day ago on yesterday's daytime broadcast that the situation is being clarified in the area of the intersection, since there is information on drone footage that Russian troops attacked in this area, that is, according to the geolinking of drone footage. But it was one moment, and we talked with you, that the situation is being clarified. Today, we see that the situation is that the Apu is already present here, so a gray zone has been added, instead of a red one. The situation remains quite dynamic, although the Russian side is making a number of attempts to circumvent, to strike a flank attack, but it is possible to restrain for the most part, and I repeat, with varying success, based on the geolinking of drone footage. What we see. They are making a big bet right now, on a strike from the south. Why do I speak for a flank strike? Because there is a transfer to the forest belt of forces that we had concentrated in Avdeevsky, as a chemical plant, in the Stepovoy area. That is, more will try to press it, most likely either at night or at dawn, just the same to the south, based on the information that is available today. But for now, we are stating the addition of a gray zone, instead of a red one. Moving on. The situation in Orlovka is also quite dynamic, but not everything is the same here as in the Burdik area, and the situation is a little more complicated here, because the enemy also attacks in the area of the beam, in the western, southwestern, even I would say so, direction, that is, along the beam itself, assuming that he will be able to approach close to Orlovka from the north, or rather to its northwestern part, and in this way to strike from two directions, that is, to press not only from one, but from two, and accordingly worsen the overall situation, because the advance to this area where there are roads is extremely negative. It will affect further defense. This also needs to be understood in a subtle way. There were a number of statements today from both our side and the Russian side. In short, the fighting continues with varying success. In other words, there were attacks by Russian troops again, including with the support of tanks. They managed to repel the attacks. Well, a number of counterattacks were also made by the AFU, but in general we state the situation by the end of the day, without significant changes, but it remains dynamic. On May Day, the pressure is increasing. Most likely, it will increase in the near future. We said at the time that Russian troops were attacking from Vodiane in the northern direction, when it was on the northern one. Then it was possible to restrain this onslaught on the thin one. But there is such a situation here, that the number of assault groups that the Russian troops have, they are naturally trying to use them somewhere else in the neighboring area. Well, accordingly, this is just the same Mayday. There are increasing pressures. Heavy fighting is going on along Pershetravneva Street in the north direction. We proceed further in the Kurikovsky direction. I will comment on Georgievka. Today there were shots, and there were messages. Shots from the Garden Association Don, and there were reports that the Russian troops, these are shots from the FO, the transfer of additional forces to the dacha village of Don, and, accordingly, will increase even more pressure on Georgievka itself, or rather on its southeastern part, based on the information that is available. In other words, the enemy here will only increase pressure in the near future, as we see, but by the end of the day, we are still stating fighting in the gray zone. But, it presses seriously. There are still a number of attacks in the victory area with us, still continuing along the forest belts. In the direction of the T-shaped intersection, in the direction of the field reservoir, we state with varying success here. But this information is closer to 6 in the evening. I would say, it is not the latest, and sometimes, as you remember, there is a delay. As in Novomikhailivka, there are also fights with varying success as we see. First of all, it should be noted that this is exactly what is connected with the news background. The fact that some consensus has already been reached in Europe today has actually collected all the necessary amount for the purchase of 800,000 artillery ammunition for Ukraine. And accordingly, this allows the APU to strengthen artillery strikes more, to use those reserves that were in warehouses more. There were some restrictions, there was a shell hunger, but it remains. Now it's too early to say that the APU is strenuously, but in any case, the number of artillery strikes by the APU has increased. And this is really felt at the front, because the Russian troops have had really significant successes. It's just on the news that a consensus has been found for the purchase of 800,000 ammunition. We see a number of problems, primarily related to artillery strikes again. There is such a moment, we move on. Therefore, we do not record significant changes, and the situation in a number of areas is quite dynamic, but let's say, dangerous at the same time. In terms of work, the situation here is just the same, much worse than in any other sector of the front. Ivanovo, I mean, the Avdeevka direction, under Avdeevka as a whole. So, in the afternoon, we marked the addition of a gray zone, a small area. A little later, new information appeared that the Russian troops attacked from the recruiting in the northwest direction were present at the T-shaped intersection, which means that they managed to advance where the anti-tank ditch passes, north of the anti-tank ditch. Therefore, the situation is quite complicated now, I would say, because counterattacks are being carried out from the AFU. All necessary measures are being taken, as we had it in work, when Russian troops entered the central street, approached the school even north of the central street, then they were knocked out, and in general they managed to stabilize relatively. Now we have added a gray zone for the direction of work, and so far, there is a minimal red one along the trench, along the Russian positions, but most likely they managed to restore the line along the anti-tank ditch. Now the information is being clarified, because there are active heavy battles and stabilization measures on the part of the AFU. As in our work, let's say it doesn't make sense to paint us red for a few hours, because I've seen your comments on why it's not painted over if Russian troops are present there. They are present as in the work for half an hour. Well, for half an hour, it makes no sense to paint over these. Or rather, on the broadcast to show where the Russian positions we have marked for you. Then it will be seen. The situation will be clarified within 24 hours, but it can be stated that the enemy has launched offensive actions here, and based on the vector of his attacks. Recruiting in the direction of the Uespanovskaya beam, about which we have talked a lot with you, that it is a key goal for them. According to it, they want to restore positions, respectively, to bypass the work on. Well, the vector was also not as we expected. We thought on the previous broadcast that it was possible from east to west. No, there was an attack from the south to the northwest, in a northwesterly direction. Well, conditionally we will also say the US Panovskaya beam. But there are a lot of attempts, and I repeat, the hardest battles are going on now. In addition to what we said for 800,000 rounds of ammunition, today Bulgaria began sending not 100, but 110 BTR-60. The model is old, but still reliable. In addition, Bulgaria is ready to transfer self-propelled guns, carnations, and a number of armored vehicles they have in warehouses, and they are ready to share this with Ukraine. Under what conditions, of course, we still have a question. It is not known for certain, but in any case, little by little, the revival begins. Well, not exactly the one that is necessary, but still it is there. And against this background, there are even reports from Western sources, Western media resources, that on the basis of anonymity there, someone reports that the IFU is preparing for a counteroffensive this year. I'll say for now, it's too early to get my hopes up, but why there is such information, that's where we'll end. It is based on how much ammunition was promised to the IFU in the 23rd year for the counteroffensive, how much was allocated, and what these 800,000 will give them the opportunity in a shorter time. The deadlines are actually 6 times shorter than those. This and that is 6 times, and there we take the limit to 2 months, and not for a year. Therefore, they say that they can manage there in a month, but so far it looks too positive. And against this background, of course, if Russian troops can be killed in the sauce by artillery, plus, I repeat, Bulgaria, the Gvozdika self-propelled gun, and a number of other states, are now starting to look for barrels. That is, the bet is visible not only on ammunition, but also on barrels. Moreover, the Soviet model as well. Therefore, yes, it may well be so, but I wouldn't speak for a counteroffensive. I would simply say that there will be a number of counterattacks in order to improve tactical positions, level the front line, get more advantageous positions where the heights are, and so on and so on. I would not make loud statements yet. It's still very, very early, because there are a number of factors that are now relatively unpredictable, how they will affect. These are F-16, the amount of air ammunition that will be transferred, the timing that will be transferred, when 16 will be involved, in what quantity 1, 2 or 10. To all this, add what Russian military commanders and Russian fighters are complaining about now, that the IFU is already changing the frequencies of drones in a basic way, and RAP systems do not work against these drones. And unfortunately from our side, we will also begin to state this at some point. It's just that now we have some advantage, and here is a situation where just RAP will be effective there by 10 to 20, maximum 30%. Yes, it will be unpredictable. There will be something that we talked about in October of that year, when I told you. It means that there will be a certain zone of at least 5 kilometers, gray, yes, at least 5 kilometers, where neither side will simply be able to attack normally, because drones and RAP systems will immediately take off, will be ineffective. Then I was corrected that RAP would be able to jam everything. But today we see other news about the fact that just the same frequency changes, artificial intelligence, which will be able to change frequencies itself. It will just bypass RAP systems. Yes, they also do smart RAP, but there are a number of nuances there. Then here you need to look at the situation. Therefore, in the summer, for the summer we have absolutely unpredictable, I would say so. Well, this is my vision, I saw it back in the month of October. Now it is confirmed, that's how it is built logically. Most likely it will be so. Until tomorrow's broadcast, be sensible. Glory to the assembled forces of Ukraine.